Yo, what's up bros? I gotta steal a couple of seconds of your time to thank you so much. I uploaded my first video ever 27 days ago and we're already at 10k subs, which is so surreal. So thank you so much. I answer to all the comments, so be sure to talk to me below. I also post recaps daily, so subscribe to become a bro today and enjoy in the video. Now we see Lucy and Joseph talking in the secret instrument tower, where she's giving him the report about the bookstore owner and explaining how even the elder council admits they were wrong for doubting Joseph's comments about this bookstore, which also means that they have officially approved of Joseph's request to give the cursed sword candela to Mr. Lin. Joseph says that it was about time for those old fossils in the Elder Council to realize that the peace in knocking can only be achieved if the secret instrument tower works with Mr. Lin. Lucy admires Joseph and tells him she never saw someone as pure white as him, implying that his soul is pure since she can see the good and evil of people's souls. But Joseph comments how this is just a Radiant Knight white suit, which other Radiant Knights also wear. So we can see that Joseph has been hanging out with Mr. Lin because he's learning about misunderstandings from the best guy out there. Lucy also comments how the Elder Council will return Joseph his rank of a Radiant Knight once again, and Joseph comments nothing about this, just asking for the approval document for the transfer of the sword candela. As Lucy is leaving the room, Joseph smiles and asks her how she feels now after receiving his help. Lucy first surprised, but then turns around shining bright like a diamond because of how happy she is, says that Mr. Lin gave her a new life. Lucy leaves and Joseph tells Claudie to come out, while we see Claudie hiding behind a wall. A little embarrassed because Joseph knew he was there the whole time, Claudie tells Joseph that there are some urgent important documents for him to sign, but how he didn't want to interrupt him, so that's why he was hiding. Joseph teases Claudie, saying that knowing him, if they were really some urgent documents, he would immediately tell Joseph about it, and how that's not the reason for him spying, but rather because he was curious about what happened to Lucy. Claudie admits this being the reason and comments how in the past Lucy always seemed depressed, but now she's like a whole different person who makes you feel relaxed when you are around her, saying that he didn't feel such a nice atmosphere in the secret instrument tower for so long, and how the last time was when the great knight Daria, and then immediately stops as he gets scared, realizing he just indirectly somehow insulted Joseph. Claudie apologizes and Joseph, at first looking a bit disappointed, tells Claudie he's not good at making excuses, but then Joseph smiles, calling Claudie pure and foolish, and tells him how he always needs to finish what he's saying, no matter to whom he's talking to. This makes Claudie blush and get embarrassed really much, because Joseph realized Claudie has a crush on Lucy, and Joseph continues saying that if you don't say something properly, you'll regret it later, while he remembers someone who looks like his daughter. Joseph then turns around and leaves, and as he's going away, he tells Claudie to do his best or else he'll get transferred to a different department. Claudie was left speechless, but then thinks to himself how Joseph wants the best for him, and that's why he told him all of this, and starts going crazy while thinking how he needs to approach Lucy no matter how embarrassed he feels about it. He decides to just start off with small talk, since he didn't even talk to Lucy ever before, so they first need to get to know each other before he confesses anything to her. As he approaches Lucy, he tells her in a shaky voice how he wants to double check the damage done by White Wolf Clan and the Scarlet Cult, and as he's saying all of this, Lucy looks at him and immediately her face becomes red how shy she gets, because she can read people's souls, and after seeing Claudie's soul, she can only see words like I like you, I love you, you're cute, please go out with me. She tells him that the damage report is finalized and turns around, now not only her face being red, but her entire body, as she calls Claudie to her office. Bros, where is this going? If something happens here, this has to be motivation to you as well to go and talk to that girl you like, because if clumsy Claudie can do it, you can do it too. Just hope that your crush can't read your soul like Lucy can. Anyway, as Claudie follows Lucy to her office, he thinks how everything went smoothly and is so happy about talking to her. Now we go back to Joseph, who's standing in front of Candela in his office, as he remembers something from the days of his youth, an interaction he had with Radiant Knight Daria. She calls him and tells him how she's gotta go on a mission soon, so he'll have to take care of dinner, and she also asks where Melissa is, and we get to learn that Daria is Joseph's wife. He comments how Melissa and him were just practicing with a sword, and how she's probably sleeping now, and we can see young Melissa crying in her bed because of how difficult it is for her to learn all of this. Daria tells Joseph how it's good that they are training, but he needs to remember that Melissa is still young, so he needs to go easy on her. And Joseph responds, teasing Daria, and says how Melissa was actually complaining that training with her mama is too hard. And Daria laughs as Joseph continues talking, saying how Melissa still needs to train much, because when he was her age, boom, he gets interrupted by a flying towel that Daria threw at him and told him, bragging time is over, I already know that you're the strongest Radiant Knight ever, so there's no need to always brag about it. But how it's funny how the almighty Joseph can't even cook. They continue chatting casually in a way that really reminds me how single I am, and then Joseph tries to tell Daria something about her mission, but a sharp pain interrupts him and he falls down. Daria worries about him, and he says that this curse is getting more and more frequent. Daria tells him to relax and starts massaging him to help him relax. She then warns him how even though he's powerful, not even he can withhold this curse, and Joseph comments saying that she shouldn't worry about it, because it's difficult to find a suitable wielder who would inherit the sword, saying how if the curse only corrupts him, but he can save more lives before that, it's fine with him. Daria comments how he'll die if this happens, and Joseph says he doesn't mind dying because he needs to protect everyone around him, because with great power comes great responsibility. Oh, hi there, Uncle Ben Joseph Parker, I didn't recognize you. Daria tells him that if one day he finds a way to solve this curse, no matter how, she hopes he'll make the right choice. How she doesn't want her loved one to suffer so much, and to actually start to live for himself once. Joseph tells her that as long as she's by his side, no curse will ever stop him, and this makes Daria blush. Joseph lifts her head up as he gets closer to her and asks her, "What's wrong? Do you have a fever?" Daria starts yelling at him, telling him that he's an idiot for not understanding what just happened, as she starts hitting him, while he tells her to stop because it hurts. Then both of them start acting like little kids after Daria tells Joseph to tell her that he loves her. Both of them are mega embarrassed now, as Joseph turns around and tells her after she comes back from the mission, he'll say it to her. She tells him how they've been married for so long now, and how he still didn't say it to her, and he promises that after she comes back, he'll definitely say it. She kisses him and tells him that she trusts him this time, and from now on, after this mission, he'll have to say it to her often. Joseph tells her no problem, how this will change after she comes back from the mission, as we go back to the present and we see Joseph sad because that was Daria's last mission, and he thinks how maybe if he stayed with her then, things would have played differently. As he picks up the sword with intent to carry it and give it to Mr. Lin, he utters, "I love you, Daria." Bros, I thought the last episode was sad, but look at my boy Joseph here. No, Joseph. Now, we go back to Mr. Lin looking through his book of customers and thinking about each customer and the books he gave them, thinking how every one of his customers is so good, they always return books on time, and not only that, but also bring him gifts as well. He then thinks about Joseph and how he planted a seed in him to turn him into a regular customer, especially because his daughter is also a customer in this bookstore as well. Mr. Lin thinks how it's been so boring recently, and how it has been 3 days since that beautiful silver-haired lady borrowed a book from him. He thinks how there used to be a time before where he wouldn't get customers for months, and now when it's only a couple of days he feels bored, and it's probably because he built good rapport with his customers and enjoys talking with them. Just then we see Joseph enter the bookstore, and Mr. Lin gets excited and happy and comments how he was just thinking about when Joseph will return the book. Joseph apologizes for not returning it back sooner, and Mr. Lin says no problem and asks Joseph if he decided about what they talked about last time. And Joseph answers by saying yes as he slams his sword Candela on Mr. Lin's table and says, "This is my decision." Mr. Lin is left completely confused, way more than usual, because he has not the slightest idea what's happening right now and what does Joseph mean by this. Joseph thanks Mr. Lin for the book as well, and Mr. Lin comments how Joseph looks way more happy because it seems he really liked the book a lot. Joseph says he's never felt more relaxed than now, and that's why he made up his mind, and Mr. Lin again has no clue what Joseph is talking about. And why is he trying to give Mr. Lin such an expensive looking sword? Mr. Lin realizes that Joseph is for real and actually wants to give him this sword, and after looking at it, Mr. Lin thinks how even for someone who doesn't know much about swords, he can tell that this one is really valuable and expensive. So he guesses that it's a ceremonial sword and not the one used in actual battles. Mr. Lin thinks that this sword for Joseph is a symbol of his military experiences and honor, and that giving this sword to Mr. Lin must mean he wants to put those memories and burdens behind him. So yes, Mr. Lin thinks he finally understands what's going on, and then asks Joseph if he's certain he really wants to give Mr. Lin this sword, because it must have been passed down for generations, so this is not a small decision. Joseph confirms and says he's sure about this because even though it has been passed down for generations, there's no one else to pass it to anymore, and that it has become too heavy for Joseph to bear it, and he needs to learn to let go of things, so that's why this decision is final. He also states that if Mr. Lin takes it, they will be greatly in debt to him, and Mr. Lin understands this as another declining organization, probably because Azir is at peace now, so there's no need for military anymore. Great thinking, Mr. Lin, you're definitely right, as you always are. Now Mr. Lin thinks how this sword is a show of gratitude from Joseph to him, because he also helped with his daughter's relationship, and as he lifts the sword, he tells Joseph that he's always enjoyed helping his customers, because that makes him feel great too. Mr. Lin realizes this sword is way lighter than it looks, so it has to be a ceremonial sword after all. Mr. Lin admires the sword as he starts swinging it around like a child would. Joseph thinks how usually he would be surprised by this, but he knows that Mr. Lin is so powerful, he can swing this heavy sword so easily without even using any ether, and this is something not even Joseph can do. What? Okay, this is really getting interesting now. Joseph thinks about how this sword was made of materials from the dream world, and this is maybe where Mr. Lin's power is connected to as well. Mr. Lin continues to admire the sword more, and with a happy face thanks Joseph and asks him if he can pull the sword out to see it. Joseph starts trembling, thinking how Mr. Lin has already noticed that the curse is connected to the blade itself, because after the original owner of the blade, King Candela, took his own life with the blade, his soul got trapped in the blade, and this way the curse was born. He then thinks how Candela was so powerful that even indescribable level beings were no match for him, and remembers an ancient text that was preserved about King Candela that says, Candela commanded the lion and the eagle. Millions of citizens supported him. When he raised light and fire, it was akin to lifting the sun. He broke obstacles, fought against the current, and cast himself towards the immortal who brought lightless night. Joseph thinks how Candela was so brave to stand up for people in the darkest moment against the most powerful immortal of the night at the time, but how in the end he failed. But the power that remains in the blade even after his death was so strong that even the powerful, indescribable radiant knights could do nothing about this curse and would all succumb to it at the end, and whoever touches the sword would get inflicted with this curse, and how the kilt itself was designed to suppress the curse, but only for a short while, and that after the blade gets unsheathed, the curse will befall the wielder immediately, and if his willpower is weak, he will go mad instantaneously. Joseph's face is frozen and both eyes and mouth wide open as he looks at Mr. Lin and thinks how this time he's the one that's going to open the blade. So what will happen then, he thinks, and tells Mr. Lin that he can take a look if he wants, but he needs to be very careful with it. Mr. Lin, of course, understands this in a way, thinking that Joseph is implying for him not to cut himself with the blade accidentally. As Mr. Lin pulls the blade out, his eyes get wide open and he gets surprised because the blade is emitting light so bright that it's shining across the entire bookstore. As he looks at his reflection in the sword, he thinks, oh, this sword is so beautiful, and Joseph starts shivering because the evil forces start overflowing out of the sword, and because this is the true curse of Candela. We can see shadows emerge from the blade looking like snakes and representing this curse as they charge towards Mr. Lin. Mr. Lin notices an ancient inscription on the blade and brings it closer to his face to take a better look, as we see both the flower he got from Doris and the gargoyle he got from Old Wild trembling in fear as well. Joseph thinks how this is bad, really bad, because the curse is about to swallow him whole and he still didn't act at all. And Joseph thinks how even in the biggest battle against Old Wild, he didn't feel the fear he feels now. Joseph is trying to figure out what Mr. Lin is planning to do as we see a huge demonic being appear covering the entire library, and as soon as Joseph saw him, he couldn't comprehend what's going on at all, but his instinct sent shivers down his spine because right now Joseph is witnessing an unfathomable taboo being appearing in front of him. We can see the dark demonic force taking shape and appearing behind Mr. Lin while he's holding the sword, and the sword curse trying to reach him. This demonic force spread its tentacles and touches the diamond in the Candela sword, and we can see the curse feeling an immense pain and trying to run away towards Joseph, and just before reaching him, it vanishes. Joseph is completely frozen in fear this entire time, trying to realize what he just witnessed happen in front of him. And from what he can understand is that the powerful curse of Candela felt what a target of a serial killer feels just before it gets slaughtered. The last moments of life when it has the strongest will to survive, but life gets taken away from it, is what this curse had just experienced. Even though the room is completely silent, Joseph can still hear cries of the curse's dying breaths. Only small bits of this curse are left in the blade, but enough for Mr. Lin to notice them as well and think how the bottom part of the sword looks a bit dark, thinking that this is maybe dirty, and since he doesn't have anything to clean it with, he'll try to shake the dirt off. He actually manages to shake the last bits of the curse off, as we can see the demonic force behind him conjure a horrifying mouth and swallow the curse. Mr. Lin notices that the sword is shining even brighter now and thinks maybe it wasn't dirty after all, but just some advanced sword craftsmanship. So he tells Joseph how this sword is really interesting, how he thought it was dirty, but it's actually just a part of the design. Joseph loses his mind now, thinking if this is actually happening, the curse that has been taking lives of indescribable level radiant knights for ages is now completely gone, and it was so easy for the bookstore owner to destroy it that he even joked about it and called it dirt, meaning that all of this is just like a toy to him. Mr. Lin comments how he doesn't have anything to give Joseph in return for this favor, but tells him if there is any book he wants, he can get it for free, while we see this demonic force like a shadow of Mr. Lin lurking behind him. Joseph answers in a shaky voice because he's never been so scared in his life, saying, "No thanks. I greatly welcome this gesture, but you decide about the book." Woohoo! Bros, this story is getting wild like old wild. Even while recording it for the second time, I had a hard time containing the emotions felt when Inky, I presume, ate that all-powerful curse of Candela like a box of chocolates. Woo! My heart is racing. That's all for today's video. To find out what book Mr. Lin will give to Joseph, and more importantly, what's going to happen in Lucy's office. I know you didn't forget about this. I know. Subscribe with notifications on so you see when the video goes live. And I want to take a couple of moments before we end again to thank you so much for 10k subs. I also realized how I've been doing this for 27 days now, gotten 10k subs and people who support me, people I talk with every day, and I didn't even tell you my name. So, my name is Nevzet. Nice to meet you, bros. Finally, I'm gonna also change my channel's name so you can remember it more easily. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome, brochachos, and peace.